it's too much, because I hope that the people would be ready to have this confrontation with the massive tourism. You know, being a small country with a massive tourism could be in a certain way, you know, the opposite of the growing up, of the development. But let's see that it will. I think we have to be aware about this. You know, I never saw before people in Tirana going as a tourist, like in Rome or in Paris, you know, group of people visiting. Yeah, it was like strange for all of us. Beautiful, good, because, you know, now the people doesn't have the mentality that Albania is dangerous or blah, blah, blah. It's not good to go. But they understood it's an open place, and, you know, as in all the Balkans, you are from Balkans too, the people are super welcomed, and they open the heart and the door. So
I mean, they almost like love foreigners more than
yes, with this problem, we have problem with komshia, no, with
the immediate neighbor.
With neighbors. But this is a story of human beings in the end. You have more problem with your neighborhoods in your small than with the others. But that's the problem of storytelling in all these years in the Balkans, that we suffer from our politics. And I was part of this project called Open Balkan. And when and I was talking with the Albanian ambassador in Albania, and I says to him that the artists and traffickants made Open Balkan before the politicians. It means okay, we need it politically to be an open Balkan, but anyhow, in the same time, it's the politicians who create troubles, because in itself, people's artists and traffickants, as I says, as ironically, they travels. You know, the people needs to travel, needs to do business, they needs to meet each other. In fact, I was already working with an institution in Belgrade, KCB. Probably, you know, Cultural Center of Belgrade. They organized October Salon. I was invited last year, and at the same time they commissioned me a new work to realize in Belgrade that I just made. It was like less than 1 month ago. I did my last film in Belgrade, in the area that you probably know called Bloku. No, Belgrade.
I saw that work, and I thought, before reading about it, I thought, this can't be Tirana. I mean, but this really looks like New Belgrade, especially those spiral staircases that you captured. So how did you find New Belgrade?
But look, you know, in the last years, I was working with the architecture, with the modernist architecture, as we used to call brutalist architecture. And I did this trilogy called The Animals, Once Upon a Time in a Present Time, that was focused on the institution architecture, that was one in Pristina in Kosovo, and one in Tirana in Albania, and the other one in Skopje in North Macedonia. After I did this, we can focus more on this. I got an invitation from the Belgrade to come and to visit Belgrade, because as we all know, Belgrade is so known for the modernist architecture, especially in the Yugoslavia time. It was one of the most developed city in our area, in the area of East Europe, like also Zagreb, but especially Belgrade. And absolutely, I was fascinated to visit all these buildings. And when I went in front these 14 blocks on this area called the Novi Belgrade, I was like, wow, I remain totally shocked. Like, you know, we have double emotion, like you are in the render and utopia place, surrounded by cement, and at the same time green. And you have the first vision, the first impression that I had, that how many people fall in love between each other, which kind of strange loves happen in this area. And I imaged this place like the Valley of Uncanny Lovers. I started working on the concept of the uncanny. As we know, Freud mentioned this, heimlich and heimlich, familiar and not familiar. And I wanted to integrate this concept of uncanny in the concept of this important emotion that is called love. You know, we spoke a lot about gender, about equality, about community, about many shapes that this planet gives to us. But sometimes, Marko, we forgot to talk about an important feeling that doesn't have border. I don't want to look rhetoric, but it's called love. That love, it doesn't mean just to love forever someone. No, love, it's a complicated emotion. No, love gives you to hate. Love gives you to madness. Love brings you to amazing things that you can never do with another emotion. No, apart the classic one that you fall in love with someone, with a girl, with a boy, whatever is it. But love, it's more complex feeling that sometimes we forgot it, you know. And yeah, that's why after my long research in these 15 years, I start thinking about probably basic thing. What does it mean, this feeling on love? What brings to us, you know? Love, it's a strange emotion also about nationality, you know, that gives a lot of problems in the same times. And what I was searching for in the same time was how in the area of AI we are falling in love, we are treating with this emotion. And as we know, many people now, they fall in love with the devices, with the objects. These are, they love, they spend more time in front of their devices, or creating a strange relationship with the devices. And I discovered that I don't let me remember a theorist from Tokyo, a professor from the Institute of Technology of Tokyo, Masahiro Morris. Yeah, he wrote 40 years ago the Uncanny Valley. No, it was not so much. It doesn't give so much interest at this time because the robot still wasn't so much developed as they are actually. But to bring it in the present, it's so interesting what he said about the robots. He hypothesized that the person respond to a human-like robot would probably shift from empathy to the revolution as it approached, no, but failed to attain a lifelike appearance. Yeah, the Uncanny Valley has become more relevant in the past few years, as I said. Science robots, they actually look and move like humans, thanks to the development of the science and the artificial intelligence. In fact, the research currently debate over whether they should try to overcome the uncanny robots or simply design robots that are more mechanical in appearance. This is a big challenge that all we know, but personally, as Driant, I am not afraid because I think is everything part of our extensions and our desire, no? That is always connected with the feeling of love. But love is always to appropriate something that is not yours, you know? When you love someone, you absolutely want this, that it's called again, man or woman, land or territory, but it's this strange kind of feeling that you want to possess this. And yes, I don't want it to spend so much time in theory, but that's how Marko, I arrived to this new chapter that I call the Valley of Uncanny Love, and how I worked, as I used to do often, in my like 16 years, I always involve persons. I start my first work with my father.
Can I ask you whether this notion of love is something that you've been exploring, and then when you encountered that site in New Belgrade, you thought, wow, this really captures that? Or was it that when you encountered the site that you thought, what are all the lives that unfold in this environment? What are all the loves that happen in this environment? Which one came first?
Oh, the second one came first. The second one was like, the
Wow, okay.
The first impression. And after that, I proposed to Kotzebue that I would like to work with a group of students, and they put me in contact with the Faculty of Dramaturgy. I never worked with actors. No one of my films are actors. It's me. There are persons that I met, or animal robots that I co-created with other people, children, students, or adults. And in this case, when they proposed me to work with the Faculty of Dramaturgy, and the Faculty of Dramaturgy of Belgrade, it's so international, no, they have a long story. And when I met these guys, I say, hello, and no, they say it's a film director, blah, 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 it's an artist. I say, hello, guys, sorry, but I never work with actors, and I don't want to work with actors. And it was a strange thing, because they pretended with which kind of script, how they will work, and blah, blah, blah. I say, from you, I want just to discover uncanny loves in this block area. And the funny thing, because they proposed me 6 students, and I met them separately, and we went around New Belgrade, blah, blah, blah. And no one of them, they noticed each other. I didn't want it that they are from the same school, but they have to be high, no? And that's because I don't want it that each other influence to the others. And I said, just go and find some stories. Come and let's talk about these stories. It takes like 3, 4 months, 5 months. We were in contact, chatting and video calling. In the end, only 3 of them continued. The 3 of them, they, probably they didn't find the interesting stuff. And at the moment that we find the story, I proposed them a challenge that the characters of the story would be not persons, but devices, objects, natural, or what we call natural, or not natural. And in fact, the first story, who came from a student called Mitar, it's a story about a leaf who fall in love with a flower, and this leaf try to do everything to catch this flower. It called also the wind in order to risk his life and to meet this flower. At the moment that he put down from the tree, he discovered that it was not a flower but just a battery of lithium. And he started talking about the battery, but the battery never responds to him, and he decide, okay, anyhow, I will decide to remain all alive with you, and the film ends. It's all around this, as Mitar calls, concrete mountains, because we love to use the architecture as a set for a storytelling, and the architecture, it's not the first character, it's the second, no? It's the story. Mm-hmm. But we create story as an excuse to narrate more the environment around the architecture, stories, and also talk about political issues. Like I noticed that in Serbia, there is a lot of discussion about the mines of lithiums in the Rio Tinto Rio. Yeah, and yeah, it was an elegant way to talk about this topic, about these leaves who fall in love with a battery of lithium.
You're kind of contrasting the environment. So if you were to have a story that is very grim and very dark, you wouldn't actually see the story because it would blend with the setting, right? But it's something about taking this, something that contrasts the architecture to actually emphasize. I see that in your work in many other instances. I don't know if that's something conscious or...
Marco, the creation, the works are more intelligent than us. Sometimes we know more about what we did growing up with these works, and sometimes we understood that we were going through another direction, and the work brings us in the other direction. I always want to leave the process of creation as an unconscious process, but and at the same time as a curious and excited process. Again, I love the term not be in love, but fall in love.
Mm-hmm.
You lose, you are dealing with the gravity, what we deal every day. In fact, gravity and love, they are super connected to each other. And that's, I am more interested in that. That doesn't mean that I'm not aware that which kind of work I'm going to do. But I don't want to put so much layers, so much theory before I finish the work. For sure, I do my own research, I do my own stuff, as all the artists, as all the people in this planet who want to create something, they do their own research. But I never feel myself close to the terms community-based artists, research-based artists. I think that all these elements are also Giotto was research-based artist. Also Giotto worked with a big community of artists. Also Giotto has the idea how to involve many people and to create like a direttore d'orchestra, like director of orchestra, how to manage all this. And I feel myself more like someone who go deep and go up and down and fall in the same time, be aware and not aware about what I am growing, what I am creating. That's why I like to create co-creation with the other people, not engagement, not community, not this, because there are no borders about this element. Because Marco, one of the elements that I decide to work with is because I fall in love with elements. If I don't have this attraction, I'm not a commissioned artist. Like, hey, Driant, this is a nice place. Please do some of your works. No, I can't. I can do it, but I will be not sincere. No, it's like fall in love with these people. Because we need that you have to be in love with someone for our story. No, I can't do it. And that's, as Gerhard Richter says, that sometimes the work of art, it's more intelligent than us.
I think that takes us to my second point that's also captured, I think, in this work in the Valley of the Uncanny Lovers, is the thing that you say about even when you're given students of some art form which is there to prescribe the story, right? So that's what the dramatic arts do. They set up and prescribe the story. Of course, there are experimental dramatic arts as well, but it's interesting that then you take people from that artistic domain, and then you almost don't want them to be what they're trained to be, and you want them to wander off. So you might have also had an architecture student or someone who's just happened to be there. This is also telling of maybe your approach, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about that, and we could even go back to your father, like the first artwork that you did, and how does that thread sort of unfold?
I like when the people push their limits and they beltrame their first idea. Sometimes, no, we trying to be in our border, framed by our ideas, and we don't want to escape from this. I love the people when they always make themselves in challenges, and that's how I started the challenges with my father, because at the beginning my father, he didn't want to do this interview, this work. When I asked him to portrait me as he used to do for 20 years, Enver Hoxha's dictator of Albania portrait. He was one of the painter of the Albanian communism. He was in Shkoder, in Shkoder, and his aim was probably to paint the leader of the communism, because you have to know that it doesn't exist, the poster, the big prints that we have it in nowadays. At this time, it was commissioned the painters to do these big portraits, and especially my father was the one who had to do this, like not even Enver Hoxha, but Stalin, Lenin, and all this communist leader. And the room of my home was surrounded by these big giant portraits. And when I was a child, they look at me. It looks they are looking at me from each corner of the room. I was like surrounded by these big faces. And when the communism fell in Albania, we were the last country in the East Europe that the communism fell in the 91. I born in 83, and I was still young. And from this big painting disappeared. It doesn't exist anymore. And my father started working in a table with small stuffs. And I was curious to understand what they are. And they were passports for the people who wanted to leave Albania. They were like all passport also from ex-Yugoslavia, no? He just changed the name of, or the photography of Marko. For example, he put my face to the passport of Marko Milovanovic, because you have the possibility to go in Europe. Me as Albanian, no, and I become Marko Milovanovic. And my father, yeah, takes a lot of years. He did this job, and as he used to say in the video in ironic way, that before my work was political. My art was political because I work for the politicians, and after my art becomes social because I work for who really needs to find another better life. And
incredible.
And
if he didn't give you a passport, you're still in Tirana.
Yeah. No, but I went in Italy, where I studied, and when I finished the graduation, you know, they gave me the maximum of the vote, and I said to them, thank you, but whatever kind of vote you will put me, my father will correct him. It was like a funny joke. And yeah, many people leave Albania through my father. The particularly thing of all the stories that, you know, there are a lot of falsificators in the world, but my father did everything by hand. And the police came 3 times to catch him, and they never find nothing. They noticed that he was one of the most important falsificator of the city of Shkoder, and a certain time they say, look, you know who you are, now you have to stop. And in 2000s in Albania start changing. There were no anymore big conflicts, big transitions. The states start making more rules. Because in a certain time, the states know all these stuffs. It was impossible to deal with this economic crisis. And, you know, they say, leave the people find their way, you know. And my father in 2000, he decided to stop and to continue doing what he really loved in his life, do paintings, and it was impossible because he had to change again his desire to Beltrame, his love, let's say, and he started working in China, bringing paintings, objects, sculptures from China to Albania for the low market, for people who want just to put paintings and sculptures, fake sculptures in their home.
And so this is all captured in a film?
Yeah, 22 minutes. It's all these stories. It's all this story, different attempts to become an artist. In fact, the title is When I Grow Up, I Want to Become an Artist. It was this title that I gave it because I was 23 years old when I did this film. I was just finishing my graduation in Italy. And for me, it was this challenge, Mark, I think for all of us, that now that I'm finishing, what I have to do. Till now, I was a student of art. And now, to what I would be, an artist? What does it mean to be an artist? Which kind of challenge I would have to become an artist? And this title was like a double question, my question, about the story of my father and what I would want to become when I would grow up.
Yeah, because usually, let's say my story is that, I'm also a little bit of an artist. I grew up really painting and drawing, and I was very, I don't want to go into why I'm an architect, but in my growing up, there was an artist studio that I went to and did learn how to draw accurately and paint. And I think it's a type of education that you probably are also familiar with. It's like, that's what you have to do.
I have a story about this kind of.
The reason why I'm mentioning this is because, and my parents weren't artists, so there was nothing so close to home that was telling me what and how I should or could be. Yet, what's interesting in your case is that you really had that. You were surrounded with a form of artistry, but yet it seems like you knew that that's not what you want. How did you overcome the idea of your father?
First of all, also my mother, she was a lyric singer, but it was impossible in the communism time for her to continue following her dream. And like both her and my father, they didn't realize their own real dream. They have to swim in the transitions time, no? I think that all our parents, I think also your parents, they are part of these generations. It's called like sandwich. They have to take care about their parents and us. They were like this kind of generation who have to pass this through strong moment, different moment. And when I was 14, my mother says, I remember to my father, look, Driant is not good for studying. He has a talent for drawing. He have to do art. It's the only thing that he can probably do in his life. That's how I start doing art now. And after I go to this private professor who teach me and blah blah blah. But yeah, this is how I start doing art now. And yes, it was thanks to my mother. But growing, taking lessons, classic lesson of arts, for me it was so boring art. Probably it was too much academic. And I saw once a painting of Maurizio Cattelan. There is a painter who cut the head to Medusa. I don't remember the title of this. No, it was, but this like a Catalan who is taking the hat of this Medusa, and he was like a painter, you know. And I switched on the idea that I have to be portrayed like my father. No, we have now to have to create this these challenges. Sorry, you can probably find it better on Google, but I don't remember the title of the painting. But I saw it like I was traveling, and I saw it in Flash Art magazine, probably. I don't remember where, but I was like a student, and I didn't know so much about neither Catalan, but I was like, boom, impressed by this moment of, and that's why I create this relationship between me and my father. He is painting me, he is telling the truth, but in the same time, he's making a fake, because in the end, he instead to put his sign, he put my sign. He is not doing anymore and Verhoja or the other little, but he is doing his son, because he never declared during he was painting me that he is my son. It's never narrated in his storytelling, in his story, that it's his son. And yeah, it's so connected to this idea how to cut this relation, to create another relation with the past. No, I was not pushed by my parents that you have to become an artist. Never. As I told you, my mother just says the only good thing that he has to do is he can draw, and for sure he can end the school in the end. And that's how everything started. And for me, as I told you, everything was so boring. Also because when I started doing these private lessons, when I was 13 years old, 14, this professor that was so known in my city of Shkoder for his big sculptures, he started teaching me, probably also you, drawing, make a perfect drawing of the sphere, you know, with the shadows, on the classic. And I remember in his studio surrounded by these big sculptures. It was 1997 in Albania. It was a civil war. You can listen to people that were like killing you. It was a terrible moment. I was like drawing with the pencil, perfect way, this sphere, and listening classic music to the old radio. It was totally absurd. And he was like, you have to do the correct shadows. Look the sphere. And you take like 2 months doing the sphere every day. And I was so stressed because, you know, I have to delete the sphere and to change the way how the shadow looks. Because the professor, I understood later that he forgot it to narrate me that exists the fourth dimension, that is time.
Yeah,
I was
the shadows move. The moves.
Yes. The shadows move, the weather changed. And I was fighting with myself to catch in my paper the same sphere that I was looking at. But every time that I go in the studio, the shadows change, and I was so stressed because I have to do the same. But I was only 13, 14 years old. And that's, for me, art was in continuous challenge, Marco, to learn and to dislearn what I learned before.
You know, you studied in Italy, which, you know, by some standards is also, like in European landscape of art schools, it's considered fairly conservative, I would say. I don't know if you would agree.
Absolutely.
You mentioned the moment when you saw this Maurizio Catalan's painting in a magazine, and it sounds as if that was the moment when you realized that maybe not that you have to unlearn, but that you can do something else. Maybe it was more of a productive moment rather than questioning you. But I wonder, at what point did you really start to unlearn and to unfold?
I don't. It's a good question, but I don't remember a precise moment. But I always remember these boring lessons in front of I study sculpture. In front of, for example, the professor used to tell me, you have 3 themes. themes of water, themes of the wind, and one a free theme. You know, you have to do 3 sculptures, all this boring stuff, you know. And I didn't find nothing exciting. No, I didn't know it so much about contemporary art world. I didn't know it so much about what is doing. Also because I didn't study in Milano. I studied in Macerata. Macerata is a really nice place in the center of Italy. But as I used to say, neither Renaissance didn't came, only till medieval times. It was perfect for to study. It was really nice to spend as a student time there. But you know, sometimes the education were so classic, as you say, also so
Conservative.
Conservative, more than conservative. They think in this way and nothing more. You know, they never pushed you, but they say that's the way. And I feel like a kind of, there is something that it's not working. I'm talking when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, because after I start traveling, I started taking the train and just going one day in Milano, one day in Torino or in Naples, just to see an exhibition. And I start understanding that the art world, it's more. And yes, I can continue to do art because there is more that I can tell, and there is more that I can do. And probably this kind of isolation of the world that was outside for me, it gives me the desire to know more about. You know, I didn't study in Florence, no, as many of my colleagues did, that you just go out and you are surrounded by art. You didn't study in Milan in super cool situation of contemporary art, you know, that sometimes you are overloaded by this. I study in a place that doesn't exist in contemporary art. And it was also funny and strange when I used to go in Milano, in Torino, when I was 20, 22 years old, to show my portfolio, my works to a curator, because when they just notice that I'm not studying in Milano in a super cool art school, they say, okay, yes, nothing interesting, you know. And yeah, that's how probably I never analyzed these elements. Thanks, Marco, for bringing me to this point. But yes, probably when you don't have something, as we know, as generation who grow up in the Balkan, you want to achieve something you didn't have, you know. That's why when we emigrate from the Balkans in the Europes, for sure, I'm sure also you try to do the maximum, no, because you know from where you came, and you know that you want to do the maximum.
Yeah.
What?
And in the beginning of this process, you're just trying to do the right thing, and you think that there is a right thing, and then I'm gonna do the right thing, and you're gonna do it as good as possible. But then you realize that's not even important. That
yes.
Doing something really well is not even important. I think to me there was a moment, maybe there wasn't a moment, but I do remember that realization but it's actually about maybe telling a story in a most compelling way. So I wonder, maybe is that where film became an important medium for you?
You know, I remember that it was the last exam of the last year of my school. I'd have to present the work, these 3 sculptures, to my professors, and I decided to go with some photos that I took to my colleagues during the sculptures. They were black and white, and I said to the professors, this is my sculpture. And they want to fight me, you know, to bring in. And thanks to the director of the fine arts, that she survived me, you know, she said. And I was totally boring about the way how was teaching to me, and it was to make this provocative action about. After in the master, because I did bachelor's sculpture, and after I decided to do in master to do multimedia. That means scenography, film director, everything, and was so exciting because I was so boring about the way how was teaching me. And that's how I started interesting in visual, in moving image. Also because it was also more easy for me to move from, living as a student. I have to move like every year from one home to another home.
Okay.
You may understand me very well. And it was so easy for me to have everything in my laptop. Where to leave my sculpture, where to leave my project, how to develop, you need a studio and blah, blah, blah. And for me, it was so easy to create, to work with photo and with film. In fact, I remember that the first exam of moving image, I didn't have neither a camera, I have just a photo camera. And how to do a film, I just instead to use the camera like it have to be, I just make some photos of the story that I created. And I didn't know it neither that it's called photo, how it's, look, it doesn't arrive at me.
Motion.
Stop motion.
Yeah, stop motion.
Stop motion, huh? And I win also a prize with this film, and was shown as an example of stop motion. But I really didn't know what was stop motion. I just have a small camera, and I wanted to do this film to take the exam.
That's a nice story of how constraints are such a potent creative tool.
Yeah, I was surrounded by my colleagues that they were super technology. They have a really good camera at this time. I'm talking again about years of 2005, that there was not as now that everyone can have a camera. It was more difficult and more. It was not easy to buy a camera, for a student who is living alone in Italy and blah blah blah. And this challenge, it brings me a lot of. The story of this film itself was nothing interesting. I never show it after, but I remember this as a challenges, as a moment of to do something, to escape also from the sculpture, from the idea of the sculpture, because I always consider myself that I'm doing sculptures, also that I deal mostly with films, but the way how they treat the films is like I go around in 3 dimensions and with the 4th dimensions around these buildings or stories, or
As you say, the element of time is so critical, and it's the one that we are so rarely taught. I'm interested in this moment of coming back to Albania. Of course, when we come back, and when I go back, and I'm gonna go back tomorrow to Serbia. But when we go back, we're of course always bombarded by this culture that we've escaped from, and all the kind of nuisances of this culture. But when we do go back, I think there is also something about educating that place, or telling the place what it needs. And I often find it, and I did this when I was a little younger, I would think that I need to tell someone how to be because they're in an illusion, but that's not the case, right? You can't do that. You can't do that because you can't recreate someone's reality. But I think what's interesting in your work, and even you speak about it, is idea of educating, or education, of art practice being also an educational practice. And I just want to talk about, where does that come from, and how do you see yourself as an educator in a way?
Yeah, thank you for your question. It came probably natural, Marco, because as I say, I fight with a model of educations.
Mm-hmm.
And probably this way that I passed, it creates me a lot of fightings inside me, and probably I needed to work with the new generation, to tell, please, we have to change the way how we approach to the world, how we want to educate. That more the word educate, I like the word sharing ideas, sharing experience, because I can learn a lot also through a children, through a teenager. We know now that with artificial intelligence, but also before with Google or whatever, you can know a lot, you can have a lot of information that sometimes you don't need it to have it from your professor. But it's not the question to have school. It's not a matter of having more information or information that you don't have. It's how you treat this information, how you deal with this information, how with these elements that existed in this cloudy world, we can deal with this. How can you use my fantasy, my imagination, to deal with these tools that already existed here? I don't need a professor who just repeat Wikipedia or who just telling me the dates when this painting is made, but I need someone who teach me why it was made it and what was happening in the moment of the story of what was made it, Guernica of Picasso, contextualizing me the situation, creating alternative way of teaching. For example, that in the first challenge that I did, it was again in the school with my professors. When I finished my film with my father, and at the same time I was thinking about what does it mean to become an artist one day. And a friend told me about the phrase of Samuel Beckett that says that trying to do an artist is trying to fail as no one else is. It's one of the most risks, let's say, and you take the risk in your life. And I was thinking about my professor, that he was just telling us, and in the school, only the masters, only men usually in the history of art, that did this, did that, it is all these theories. And I asked myself, but around these 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 names that are in the history of art, how many others were in the same time? Millions. And I asked myself that I have to find stories about artists that say failed in a certain way, who didn't continue to do art. And I invite my professor of history of art to make a different lessons about artists that in a certain way they didn't continue, and it's called bankrupt artist. It was I use this strong expression, American expression that you use for the economy. And my professor was so excited. I says to him that we don't have to mention their names. We can invent names because we are not interested in the names, but in the stories, because the story could be also ours. And let's do these performance lessons during your common lessons. And the students, my colleagues at this time, they don't have to know nothing about that. You have just to open the book, starting saying what I am doing is the performance lecture of Driant Zeneli, and we will talk about the concept of failure, of bankrupt artist, and blah blah blah, starting the classic lesson. This painting was made by this, and blah blah blah, this, etc. He was so excited in the beginning that he said yes. After many months, he disappeared. I invited also an email. I also, when I met him, he says, look, I don't want to be part of this work because it's a student work, he says. And yeah, that I'm not interested anymore on that. That means, Marco, that this work that was focused on the concept of failure, it fails properly from who have to teach the concept of the failure. And for 2 years, I only narrate this story as the failure story of a failure who was concentrated on the concept of failure artist. after 2 years, an artist and professor in a UAV University in Venice, Cesare Pietro Justi, he knows about this, and he invited me to do the first performance lesson in 2009. After this, I did it in many universities and also in the museums like Pompidou and different places. That's how I start making challenges inside the institution when I still was a student. Mm-hmm. As I did with the photos that I proposed for the exam to my professors. After I finished, I continue starting with children. I still work with children, both with my wife, that she is in a pedagogy, and she worked with crafts, and she is so good on pedagogy and in alternative pedagogy. And that's why I'm so excited, and I work a lot with people, in the last case with the Faculty of Dramaturgy in Belgrade and many others. And yeah, it's, for me, it's giving to them the possibility not to fall in the depressor and in the banality of the education.
I have two questions there. One question is, what is that thing that you learn from a failed artist? What's the most powerful lesson of a failed artist? And I wonder whether that would be the same lesson that a child would teach you. So I'd like to connect the failed artist and the child.
Yes, I learned that the failure doesn't exist, Marko.
Mm-hmm.
If there is a broken wall, this is not anymore a wall, but could be some elements to create another element. When one road is blocked, you have another road to follow. Important that in whatever you do in your life, you use your imagination. It's the society that we live that it's based in number, how many likes, how many numbers, how many followers. Mm-hmm. And that's the problem, big problem things, that if you don't have so much followers, so much numbers, so much, you are not in big collections, you are failing, no? If you are not selling in an art fair, there is something that is not going. If the structure of our society that it's based on number, not on idea and equality, or mm-hmm. in the field of love, is based in the numbers. And love is not a question of how many likes you have from your friends or not friends, you know? And that's what I learned. I learned from the story of this million different peoples who have to stop their career because the war came, or something wrong happens in their life or in the family. There are different stories, or some of them they discover they are more good to do curator or history of art. You know, there are millions of curators that they career start as an artist. Okay, mm-hmm. They understood that they can contribute in different way, or become gallerists, or becoming different. No? This is what I learn a lot each time that I prepare this lesson. There are 4 or 5 stories, and I find different characters from different moments of story, not only contemporary. Also like Vermeer. Also Vermeer he fails in a certain time, in a certain moment. He was so protected by the mother of his wife, and the mother of the wife died. The war came, and he had to fail and to sell everything in the low cheap. His work was discovered only like after 300 years old, thanks to another painter who falsificate everything what Vermeer did. Vermeer became famous only through this falsificator, because this falsificator, he wanted again to become an artist. No one accepted him, and to create a revenge, he started copying an old paintings
to show to the painter.
Yeah, Vermeer. Is this? You look now what creates all these failings. What creates other stories, other way of doing, and that's I learned. And the children, they doesn't have fear about this. They are just making crazy things, and they doesn't have the competition. We, the education, gives them the competition. That I love to create this laboratory of children. There are no competitions. It's terrible. It's so stressful. I probably you saw a lot of talent reality show, no? It's usually about dancer and singer. Wow, I can imagine my son that is going to under this pressure that he have to sing in front and to be judged. 7 years old, 10 years old, to be judged and to be eliminated, and would be only one winner, the greatest one, and the other 101, you will have one winner and 100 depressor people in our society.
You know what's the funny thing though, Driant? I think is the most doomed person in that whole process is the one who wins.
Bravo.
That person is probably has the biggest curse.
Absolutely. But this is a problem of society. That's why I like to do this laboratory, to work with children, with young people, because I don't think that I am Jesus Christ, that I can save them, but I can express to them my experience, you know? As I told you, from all my experience from the childhood till when I was studying the fine arts, I can say that I was pushed, but everything was taught in the wrong way. There was something that emotionally I was understanding that my stomach was not digesting.
So I think on one side we have the story of a failed artist, and we have a story, or not failed, but the artist that hasn't had that recognition.
Yeah. In fact, I use as provocation these bankrupt art, bankrupt lessons. That's
almost more appropriate, because bankruptcy is never the sign of success, right? I mean,
yes.
So I think it's nice that we explore this idea of a bankrupt artist, of a child. And we've spoken a lot about education in places where we come from. In a way, like working with children is quite refreshing, because the child doesn't embody all those social constraints yet. But I think there is an important duty to not just educate children, but I wonder, what can we do to educate the ones that are in education, that are already like in the chains of that structure. And I remember doing a workshop in Belgrade with architecture students a couple of years ago, and they're actually very smart, and they see very well the fact that they're being educated in a way that perpetuates this hierarchical system, and it's not really committed to ideas, but it's more committed to a hierarchy, which is really bad. And I remember talking to these young students, and I said, well, the way you should act when you are in a position of power, or when you are one day educating younger students, like, you should be doing things not the way they were done in your case, but the way you felt they should be done. So I just want to reflect on, when you engage with young people in Albania, what are those lessons that they need to learn? And how do you go about it? You're really doing something remarkable by just working and being in that environment. But I almost want to ask you, how do you really enact some change, or how do you teach?
Yes. No, it's the right question. I try to give them different elements that are part of their everyday life. And I put them on challenges, how they can mix these elements. Elements could be the building when they every day look at them, or when they leave it. I try to understand from what he or she, it or they, it's attracted by. It's attracted by an animal, for example, for a dinosaur. Okay, we have a dinosaur. We have the house of the parents. Perfect. Which kind of story are you attracted? I'm attracted by horror movie. Perfect. How these three elements that you see separately, you can put it all together in one stories. That is one of the way of, and always mention that the imagination is one of the most strongest elements that we have as animals who live in this planet. We are not the fastest animal, we are not the strongest animals, but we have the biggest ambition and imagination, because also lions, tigers, cats have imagination. Otherwise, how they can find their food? You need imagination to catch your food, to arrive to survive. But the ambitions that we have, they didn't change formally, aesthetically, metaphorically in their life. We try to become cyber, to change our shapes. These elements that in continuous we are attracted by, how we can include it together, how we can create a narrative with these elements. And that's, yeah, I look at my son, he is not attracted by toys who are already made in terms that have their own face, the puppets, no, that he's attracted by the cable of the charger of my phone. He's attracted by the bottle. He's attracted by paper. And all the children are attracted by elements that want to combine and to create their own things. If we don't lose this kind of attitude, we can do amazing stuff. Otherwise, we would have ready-made imagination. It's not easy, Margot, to work with children, because in nowadays they are fully immersed by telenovelas that their grandmothers look every day. They grow up surrounded by these stuffs, and it's problematic, because usually the children who are older than 9-10 years old, they start having a ready-made imagination. It's not so much excited. I really have to broke the rules. For sure it's more difficult with someone who is 30, 40 or 50, but trust me, with the generation after, with the children after 9-10 years old, they have the ready-made imagination. They want the same thing, they like the same thing, they listen more or less the same music. It's difficult, because the neoliberalism want to buy the mind of everyone till you are children, and you have to grow up with that. For example, stupid discussion probably with looks. Why I have to dress a children with blue if he is boy, and with rose if he is a girl? Why? For all the, when you go to the shop, he or she is telling, oh no, she's for boy, or it is for woman. This is color. Why I have to create this complexity? Why the world have to be divided in two colors? And it's the way how they want to manage our minds. It's all the question how to manage our emotion, our love, to end it.
I think it's this idea of three things that we are attracted to, or that I think it is nice to say attracted to or in love with, but maybe first you have to be attracted and then you fall in love.
How do you fall?
What would be your three things? Or maybe there are more, but I recognize in your work a real fascination with architecture. I mean, that's part of the reason why I thought it would be really interesting to talk to you. I see that one thing, but I just maybe want to explore what are those cornerstones.
I find in the architecture the ice in the island that contains a lot of elements of the past. They are freeze there. Also in the ruins, no? There are all elements, chemical stories inside. And I think that the architecture, it's one of the most power shape of creation, because it can change you really the way of seeing and the way of sitting, the way of eating, the way of dressing, the way of talking. No one other art, that's my opinion, can do this, because I can decide to watch a movie, to watch a video art or a moving image. I can decide to listen to music or not. Also, the music is so powerful, let's say, manipulation of our mind. But the architecture that have the sound in itself, because it's made by people, or also when it's empty, it's made by the noise of the computers or everything. It's really condition our way of living, in bad or in good. I see architecture always as an amazing set to create different stories.